Welcome back to the garage where we're continuing work on Project Unintended Spending, the 1987 Audi 5000 Quattro CS Turbo that has a lot of problems with it. The body looks pretty good, but a lot of the issues are under the surface. In this video, we are going to be replacing the timing belt, replacing the water pump, and topping up the coolant so the engine doesn't self-destruct. Now, this is the first time I've ever done a water pump timing belt job on one of these 5-cylinder Audi engines, especially one of these 200 chassis cars. But I think basically the same procedure that any modern Audi would require, this one's going to require as well. And that's removing the entire front of the car, meaning this crash bar support, the bumper, the grille, all of that has to come out of the way because the engine is just so far forward. Now, I'm sure there's a way to actually replace the timing belt without removing all that, but I don't care. I'm going to give myself as most access as I can have. I don't really know all the steps to doing that, so I'm going to throw this on time lapse and we'll just see how far I get. Let's dig in. Alright, so clearly I've gotten the front of the car off. I was able to take off this turbo outlet pipe and see the condition of the turbo, and I have good news. It's in pretty darn good shape. It's got a little bit of side-to-side play, which is typical of a non-ball bearing turbo. Spins fine, doesn't have any in-out play. That's good. But when I took this elbow off, I could smell gasoline pretty strongly, and you can see in here, it's pretty wet, and I think that's maybe from the cold start injector or something along those lines. Not sure. But either way, we're close to the timing belt, so I'm going to continue on by removing the accessory belts and then getting this harmonic balancer off. With the timing belt now visible, we can see that it's actually in decent condition, and that's because it's been replaced within the past decade at some point. But I believe a real problem is this water pump that's leaking. The next thing we need to do is set the engine to top dead center. I believe we're 180 degrees out. Our indicators are right here on this lower timing cover. There's a notch in the harmonic balancer. And then someone has done me a solid and put some match marks on the cam pulley and the backing plate. So I'm pretty sure it just turns 180 degrees and we'll be all lined up. I haven't removed the spark plugs or anything like that. I'll get to that later. I'm just trying to keep the potential for dirt getting in the engine as small as possible because this thing is filthy. Alright, so that is top dead center. Now I'm going to pull this lower timing cover off and see if I can't make match marks on the cam pulley and on the crank pulley so I know exactly how to reinstall the new timing belt. Another challenge of removing the timing belt on this engine is that you need to be able to hold the crankshaft pulley stationary. And there's not a good way to do that. I've seen some people make some homemade tools and they do end up working. Audi did make a specific tool for doing this job, and I've gone ahead and bought that. That's right, this is an actual VW Audi tool. Found it on eBay for like $50, which is a lot of money for a job you're only gonna do once, but really I just wanted to make sure I could do it. Didn't want to mess around with making my own tool. So the idea behind this is you've got these notches here. You line up to the notch in the crankshaft pulley, and then this little fork fits into here. and that will lock this in place so you can undo the bolt. Now, another challenge of this is the bolt is tightened. If this was tightened to the spec in the manual, it's like, I mean, it's really tight. In fact, Audi recommends getting this like 10-inch extension bar. It's basically a torque multiplier. I don't have that. I didn't think I needed it. I think it's ridiculous to need to tighten that up that tightly. This isn't like a semi truck. There's no way this is under that much force. So I'm just gonna get this as tight as I can. In the neighborhood of 300 foot-pounds is how I'm gonna tighten it back up. But to loosen it, you at least need this tool and a long breaker bar. And before I do this, I did make a match mark down here on the crankshaft pulley and on the timing belt, and up here on the camshaft and timing belt. There is a spot that you can kind of sneak in and get a marker made on there. This is unique in the fact that the crankshaft sprocket is one with the crankshaft harmonic balancer piece. So you remove that, you lose all ability to see where the timing belt was at before you took it off. So it's very important to put that match mark on there. That definitely wasn't anywhere near, I mean, that was probably maybe 100 foot-pounds it was on there. It just goes to show that this car has been running for however long since the timing belt was last changed, and it didn't loosen up. You don't need God's strength through this bolt. You just don't. I'll tighten it up, probably in the neighborhood of 300 foot-pounds, and call it good. Now you notice the timing belt did move a bit. I'm see if I can't pull it back to top dead center with this cam tool that I've got. Surprisingly, that's actually very loose and will be easy to remove. See, that's where I marked it on the pulley. You can see it's clearly leaking a lot of oil from that seal. Now I'm not looking for perfection here, but I do need to get this a bit cleaner just so I can put new parts back in and without contaminating the belt and seals and all of that. So I'm gonna hit this with some engine degreaser, do a little bit of scrubbing on it and rinse it off, and we should be in a much better spot. Alright, that looks quite a bit better now. Now I feel more comfortable actually taking things out like the seals and all of that. Now, as I've been thinking about all the problems that this car has, one of them being that the heater core seems to be clogged according to the previous owner, I've decided that I'm going to address that, or at least diagnose it right now while I have the coolant somewhat drained and able to do that sort of diagnosis. So what I have tried to do so far is disconnect the coolant hoses that go to the heater core, which are way back here in a tangled mess of wires and vacuum lines. It's very difficult to access anything. And obviously how a heater core works is you have two hoses that go to it, and it's controlled by a flapper valve. It's a vacuum operated flapper valve here that actually directs coolant into it. But secondarily, you have another hose that goes into a hard line that looks like it kind of goes into the thermostat housing right here. And I've tried to put water into one of these hoses that goes into the heater core, but I'm not getting water coming out the other side. So it could be a couple things. Either the heater core is in fact clogged, or it's just the thermostat being in the closed position that's making it seem like water's not coming through the heater core. So I'd like to verify that the heater core is actually clogged or not. And so to do that, I'm going to remove the thermostat and the housing, and that way it removes all sort of resistance from the heater core to the engine. And I should be able to see water come out if the heater core isn't clogged. If it is clogged, then I still won't see, well, hardly any water coming out. It's not really an extra step that I have to take because I do have a new thermostat anyways, so I might as well just do this right now. And of course I misspoke when I said this was the thermostat housing. It's actually down here. This is a very disorienting engine bay with a bunch of random little components everywhere that look kind of like something they aren't. So I need to remove this lower radiator hose to get to the thermostat. This is a real difficult one to capture, but that's the thermostat. And I'm not sure if there was supposed to be a gasket on that thermostat housing or not, but now that we're in here, we can see the evidence of what I believe is the stop leak that I was warned about that was put into the system. There's a lot of like crystallization in the coolant that's coming out and some kind of like sand looking stuff. And I think that's kind of what stop leak looks like. Honestly, I've never used stop leak. It's a terrible solution that should never be employed in any sort of engine, but here we are, and that's why we're taking this apart. In fact, you might be able to see it in the radiator here. I'm gonna have to flush that out. There's some kind of, looks like a metallic or even glitter in the coolant, and I'm pretty sure that's stop leak. Okay, with the thermostat out, now I'm going to try pouring water through the heater core. There really should be nothing in the way, assuming the heater core isn't clogged. We should see water start to pour out of the thermostat housing there. So we can see that water is slowly starting to trickle out. Slowly is the key word there. To help move this job along, I'm actually going to try pressurizing the system with some air and see if we can't push this water out faster. If only I could show you the amount of junk that just came bursting out of this. That just came out of there. I don't even know what that's all about. This has caused just an absolute mess, but you can see all those shiny particles in this. While I've been pressurizing it, it's been blowing out where the water pump goes, because that's just a straight shot from the heater core all the way back. It's been shooting out. Onto my tools. It's a mess. I'll get it cleaned up. Unfortunately, when you're working with cooling systems, there's no way to keep clean about it. It is always going to make an absolute mess. This is the sort of thing that should teach you, if you didn't already know, never to use stop leak. All right, now I'm going to flush the radiator out. Yes, I know it's probably easier just to take the radiator out, but honestly, this is not actually a very easy radiator to remove, so I'm just going to do it in the car like this. So after kind of blowing air through the heater core and seeing all that gunk come out, I've changed my opinion on replacing that heater core. I don't think it's a good idea to try and reuse that, even though there does appear to be a pathway for coolant to flow through it now. It'd just be foolish to not replace it. So we'll address that in a future video, which means we will not be putting this entire car back together in this video. Knowing that, let's go ahead and look at the new parts we will put into the car to address the timing belt job. Here are all the parts for doing the timing belt job. So we have new accessory belts, the AC, power steering, and alternator belts. And then we have a new water pump, really nice looking piece with a metal impeller compared to the plastic one of the one we just pulled out, with a new O-ring gasket. And then we've got a new thermostat made by Vimo, which is a German brand. It has a new sealing gasket with it as well. Then a new timing belt idler pulley made by INA. And then new crankshaft and camshaft seals, as well as the new timing belt, which is made by Gates, which is a high quality timing belt. And I've put the match marks on this. I've compared it up against the old belt before I took it off. So I've got, I think that's the crankshaft mark, and then the camshaft mark is right there. So we know how to install this correctly. The first step to reassembly here is going to be cleaning up this thermostat housing and cleaning it up on the block side as well. So we can insert the new thermostat in there, and then we can move on to the oil seals. right, that is the timing belt installed, as well as all the accessory belts, and we are going to call it good for this video right there. Now, unfortunately, when I was fitting up the new accessory belts, 2 of them didn't even come close to fitting. That's just the downside with a car that has all these different configurations and all these different specs for belts. The kit that I ordered had the wrong configuration, so that's just the way it's going to be. One of them did fit barely. I mean, I was able to kind of pry this alternator belt on there. The rest of them, I just had to put the old ones back on there, since apparently local auto parts stores just don't have metric sized belts or even standard sized belts that even get close. That's just the reality in the United States. You rarely find metric or anything remotely European or non-standard at your local auto parts stores. That's just the name of the game. So obviously I didn't put the coolant in the system yet because we have to take on that heater core replacement, which is what the focus of the next video is going to be. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to get anything else more done in that video because I know that's going to be a bear of a job. But one of the other things we need to do while we have the front of the car taken apart is deal with that starter wire issue so we can put the ignition switch back into play, and then also clean up the engine bay in general. There's lots of random little things like a charger here that I want to remove, and then I want to remove that old school radar detector system. Things that are more than likely causing a voltage draw, a parasitic voltage draw on the system when the car's off. Just want to get them out of the system. May also clean up some grounds because I can see a bunch of rusted kind of ground connectors throughout the front of this car. So if I can clean those up, it'll help prevent issues from occurring or help resolve some issues that I don't even know are happening yet. So that gives us a lot of things to try and get through in the next video. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boys.
Sound right, boy.